The interview with BJNN is brought to you by Biz Events, connecting the Central New York business community through events.
We're back with Mayor Walsh, the 54th mayor of the city of Syracuse, which was incorporated in 1848. So you can do the math and see how many years the average mayor was in office. My arithmetic says 3.1, so I'm sure he'll be in office for 8 years, and that number will go up.
Let's hope so.
One of the things we've talked about efficiency in government before, and we've talked about your working with the Common Council and the budgeting process. But one of the things in running this city that's always amazed me how you can ever do it and come out with a budget that's balanced or maybe even has a surplus is the fact that something like 50% or more of the properties in the city are not on the tax rolls because they're not for profits.
Right.
Or I'll throw in another category, which would be state government properties and offices, federal government offices, for which there's no compensation. Now, I think most of the audience realizes that some of the companies, institutions like Syracuse University, have come to agreements over the years, and my guess is some of the hospitals have as well.
Just Syracuse University.
Just Syracuse University. You heard it here first.
Krause Hospital did have a brief agreement with the previous administration, but at this point...
Expired?
It did.
Okay. So we certainly won't use the word taxing not-for-profits because some will go ballistic. But we'll call it a service fee placed on these not-for-profits for benefiting from city services such as police and fire.
Right.
And a number of other services that are costly to the city. What's your plan for convincing these not-for-profit corporations and governmental entities to, in fact, come to an agreement on service fees?
Well, it starts with relationships. I've had conversations with the heads of all of our major nonprofit institutions. And while you can look at it from a negative perspective in terms of their presence in the city as it relates to the to property tax generation, but as I think you would certainly agree, Norm, there's a significant benefit to having those institutions in our city as well. And so you have to look at both, and that's what we're trying to do. My conversations with the heads of these institutions has been that we value their presence here in the city. They add significant value to us, but it doesn't necessarily make up for the fiscal challenges that we have in delivering those services. I am not inclined to prescribe a specific solution for that works for all institutions. I think they're each different and they need to be handled differently. For Syracuse University, they have felt comfortable in providing us with those service payments in a way that has certainly helped us. I think we have to continue to build those relationships with the other institutions to figure out what the right formula is there. But again, they add significant value. We want to be partners to them, and I think we're off to a good start there.
Do you, let's take Syracuse University as an example, since they have so many events and you're responsible for policing those events. Is there a way that you have measured the cost of the services you provide so that this is not an abstraction when you're talking to these entities?
It's a good point, and I couldn't tell you off the top of my head what the specific costs were for every public event. Although that at least as it relates to Syracuse University, that's where a lot of the payments stem from, are the costs associated with providing police services for dome events, for example. So, but your point is well taken, and I think to the extent that we continue to have those conversations, they have to be informed by the facts and by real numbers. And I don't think it's fair for me to just expect to put my hand out and for everyone to cough up some additional resources for us. I think we have to make the financial case, and that will certainly be part of the process.
Okay. Well, you're not alone in governing the city, so you have to work with the Common Council.
Yeah.
And since you're not a member of one of the major parties, I'd be curious how your relationship is with them. And then the second part of the question is when you get to the county, since you obviously have a relationship with the county and an overlap. Let's start with the Common Council.
So I've been very pleased with my administration's relationship with the council. We certainly haven't agreed on everything, and there have been certain certain pieces of legislation that we've put forward that haven't been approved. We've had to negotiate on a number of different areas, but just as I said with the budget process, it really comes down to how we engage with them. And having served as a department head in the previous administration, I had a sense for what worked and what didn't. And in my experience, when I worked closely with my committee chair on the council, which in my case is the economic development guy, was for the most of the time was Khalid Bey. Anytime I had a piece of legislation that was coming, I would sit him down first and I would talk to him about it, address any questions or concerns, perhaps bring in, if it was related to a developer or a business, bring them in. The committee chair can communicate with his or her colleagues, and it all comes down to communication. Again, it doesn't mean that we're always going to agree, but at least that way there's a respect of the legislative part of the process, and we're giving them the information they need to make an informed decision. Okay. I've tried to reinforce that with my department heads in this administration. It's a work in progress, but so far so good.
All right. Well, a few years back, the tax sharing on the sales tax was the big question.
Yeah.
Is that settled for the moment, or are you still negotiating on it?
It's very much a big question. I was in the previous administration. I was on Mayor Minor's kind of internal team working on the sales tax negotiations, and I learned a lot from that process. And I think most would agree that the city benefited from that process and from that agreement. A lot of credit goes to Mayor Minor, but also County Executive Mahoney at the time, and the legislative bodies at the council and the ledge. The good news is not only was I involved in that process in some way, but County Executive Ryan McMahon was too at the time in his role as a county legislator. Mm-hmm. So we have that historical perspective. We've talked a lot about it just over the past month or so since he's taken office, and I'm cautiously optimistic that we're going to work towards. It expires every 10 years, so we're coming up on a renegotiation, and I'm cautiously optimistic that we're gonna work it out sooner rather than later.
I can't believe 10 years has gone by already. We're almost 10 years.
Almost 10 years, yeah. So, but yeah, we're talking about it. We're working on it, and I'm hopeful that we're gonna work it out and be able to move on to other things.
Okay, so we've covered the Common Council. We've covered your relationship with the county, and I think one of the questions, which might not be directly related to what business people are concerned about in economic development, but obviously I think the major question, one of the major questions you always have to deal with, is the question of poverty in the city itself.
Yeah.
Much longer term problem. Is that something you can deal with, or you're dependent on state and particularly federal funds to try to deal with that question?
Yeah, I think it's all of the above. Certainly a lot of the resources that we have to address poverty come from the state and federal government in the form of, at the federal level, community development block grant funding, and at the state level, a number of different departments. The way in which we as an administration have tried to address the poverty issue is to really dig into the data and understand when all other things are equal. And you have to understand that a lot of what is impacting our economy, as you and your readers and viewers know better than I do, is a result of global macroeconomic forces that we have really very little or no control over. So taking those out, when all other things are equal, where are the areas where we have an ability to, an opportunity to move the needle, and where we are lagging behind our peer communities? So we've spent a lot of time just recently looking at some of the recent census data, and we have identified some specific areas where we think that there are opportunities to make significant changes. When you look at Syracuse compared to even our upstate communities, we are lagging behind when it comes to internet access. Half of our city residents do not have access to a computer in their home with broadband access. That's a significant barrier to poverty. And again, we're lagging behind our peer communities. Housing stability, something that our innovation team has been focused on this entire year. 25% of our city residents move at least one time every year. And if you think about all of us have moved at one point. How disruptive that is in your life. Think about having to do that in poverty and not by choice. Perhaps you're facing an eviction. Perhaps there are code violations at where you're living, and you're forced out of the home. Those are those barriers where we have an opportunity to make an impact, to really start to move the needle. There are others: educational attainment, workforce development, transportation is another one. We're lagging behind our peer communities when it comes to access to reliable public transportation. So that's where we're really trying to focus our efforts, so we can start to make up some ground.
Okay. Well, one question I hear all the time from the business community is that we have job openings and we don't have people to fill them.
Right.
In fact, nationally, there are more job openings than there are people unemployed.
Yeah.
Rare occurrence for us. Is there something specifically that the city can do to train the people who are in the who are on poverty level, so that they can take the jobs that are open? Is that a possibility?
It is, and it's something that we're very focused on. It's not easy, but there are ways to do it. First is addressing some of those barriers that I talked about that keep people from either attaining the right education or skill level, or keep them from getting to work. So there are those basic life barriers.
Right.
Beyond that, there is more directly addressing that misalignment between the jobs that are available and the skills that the workforce has. And again, to your point, as is the case with most of our issues, it's not unique to Syracuse. But we can look to specific areas locally where we have where it's working better. I start with the Syracuse City School District. All urban school districts have significant challenges primarily related to the poverty levels. And when you look at this district's graduation rate, for example, as a whole, it's 64%, which is nowhere near acceptable. It is headed in the right direction. But if you dig down a little bit deeper and you look at our high school, the Institute of Technology at Central, ITC, located right downtown, where the majority of our career and technical education programs, CTE programs, are focused. Our graduation rate at that school is 93%. And we're not skimming from the top. These are kids that are coming from throughout the city that are interested in specific areas where they can get skills, real life skills that they can apply either if they go on to college or if they are looking for a different path, apply directly to a job. So we're trying to build the capacity of the school district to do more in the CTE arena, and we have a partnership council of businesses that are supporting us in that effort and seeing the value in that effort. We think we can do a lot more and extend it beyond the city through some regional partnerships. You also have to look at our workforce development partners, make sure that the people are receiving the right training. There are some good smaller models, what they're doing at SUNY Educational Opportunity Center, SUNY EOC, the Work Train program that Center State runs. We're doing it on a small level. The question is, how do we scale it in a way that really begins to close that gap?
Okay. You undoubtedly have a concern about whether there will be a takeover of the public education system in Syracuse. Is that some of the schools, all the schools? Is that something you're wrestling with?
There was some recent news that came out that there are a number of schools that were on a watch list from the state education department. Most of those schools, 4 of those schools, made significant progress and were moved off of that list. 3 schools did not. While they did make progress, it wasn't at a level that the state expected. This isn't the first time it's happened in the city. This is what happened with Fowler High School, which led to the creation of the Public Service Leadership Academy at Fowler, which again is focused more on that CTE model that we know works. But yeah, we have three schools in the district right now that face the threat of state control. But we also we're working very closely with the school district, trying to look at long term. What's the right plan for those schools? It might be the Fowler model, redefining what that school is, creating a different school. But we have to remind ourselves that as much as it's important to look at the data and the numbers, these are real people. These are children that we owe the very best educational opportunity for them. And if they're not getting it for whatever reason, whether it's due to those poverty barriers, whether it's due to other extenuating circumstances, if they're not getting the education that they need and they deserve, something has to change. So that's what we're trying to do.
Okay. Well, we have covered a number of subjects today, and I'm going to flip the agenda over and ask if there's something we haven't covered that you would like to talk about.
Well, thinking about your your readers and your viewers who are business minded, coming from my background and my previous role at the city, an area that I've spent a lot of time working on and am going to continue to is on addressing what people describe as the red tape, the permitting process, the zoning, things that often take a lot of time and frustration, and for again those that are reading and watching what you produce, it's costing them money. And I'm hypersensitive to that, and sensitive to the fact that we don't do it as well as we need to. So we spent a lot of time working with our code enforcement and zoning offices, working through our permit desk, identifying both technology solutions and process solutions that can enable us to do a better job at it, but also at the same time combining that with a culture shift and more of a customer service focus, and understanding the direct relationship between city employees' actions or inactions as it relates to the ability of businesses and developers to make or lose money. So lots more to do there, but we're working on it.
What a revolutionary idea. And I'm sure you're ready for all the pushback that you're going to get for being a friend of the developers. But you've dealt with that in the past.
It comes, it's been happening, from throughout the campaign. And listen, we need people to invest in this community, and we want people to make money in our community. Mm-hmm. My feeling is when you're talking about asking for public resources to help you in that process, well, then we get to have a little bit of a say into how you use those resources and make sure that your project is aligning with our priorities. But the idea that we should somehow not be supportive of developers and businesses and others that are investing, that is not something that I subscribe to. In order to grow as a community, we need partnerships like that.
Well, as somebody who used to walk down the street, Salina Street in particular, in the 1940s and watching the revival of downtown, kudos. That's all I can say. It's been a pleasure this morning to spend some time with the 54th Mayor of Syracuse, Mayor Ben Walsh. And I say this affectionately, part of the Walsh dynasty that goes back to his grandfather and his father. And we won't talk about whether there's a congressional run somewhere in the future, but right now he's focused on the city of Syracuse, and we want to thank him for sharing his thoughts with us this morning.
Thanks, Norm. Happy to do it.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.